Hi everyone, this is William from the Headphone Experience, and tonight's video is a comparison between two very high-end headphones. The first would be the Spirit Torino Twin Pulse Ragnarr 1706 Special Edition, and the second would be the Kennerton Thror. The Spirit Torino I've had for a couple months now. It's on loan to me from Headamp, and I need to send it back pretty soon, so I'm trying to get this one last video out using this headphone. And the Kennerton Thror I've actually had for over a year now. I liked it so much that I ended up buying it from Kennerton, and it's been sort of my reference for high-end headphones. I really do like it. But I wouldn't be doing this review if I didn't think that the Spirit Torino was also a great headphone that, was up in the same league as the Thror. So anyway, I'm not really trying to come up with a winner here. It's not a one versus the other. It's more of a comparison of two really great headphones, but they're quite a bit different from each other. I mean, they're different in almost every way. So what I'm going to try to do is compare these and tell you what ways they're similar, what ways they're different, and let you decide which may be the better headphone for you. They're both in about the same price category, pretty close, and so if you're looking at a headphone in this price range, these are both going to be, headphones you would probably consider. So I want to, just talk about the differences more than anything, and help you know what headphone may be the better choice for you. So anyway, I'll start out with the Spirit Torino is made in Italy. The Kennerton is made in Russia. The Spirit Torino, this model currently sells for $3,950 in the US, and the Kennerton currently sells for $3,408 in this particular wood, which is Zebrano wood. And the Kennerton, I'm using the ECL02 ear pads, which now the Kennerton Thror comes with both. When I got it, it came with the ECL01 ear pads, and the ECL02, which sell for about $71, but like I said, it comes with both now, so you have a choice. They give it a little bit more bass, and I do prefer it that way. Anyway, I'm also using an upgrade cable on the Kennerton, which is the custom Litz cable from Kennerton. It's a braided cable with a 4-pin XLR plug on it at the amp end, and 4-pin mini XLR plugs at the headphone end, and that it sells for about $379. So that actually puts the total price of the Thror up to about $37.87, which is still about $163 below the price of the Spirit Torino. Anyway, these are both full-size, wired, over-the-ear, open-back headphones. The Spirit Torino uses dynamic twin drivers. It has 2 drivers per ear cup that are stacked on top of each other and wired in series. The Kennerton Thror uses an 80mm planar magnetic driver. Spirit Torino doesn't give the sensitivity of the Twin Pulse Ragnarr, but it comes across as being sort of medium, pretty easy, just a little bit harder to drive than most 32 ohm headphones, and that is the reason why. The impedance on the Twin Pulse is 64 ohms, and the impedance on the Thror is 42 ohms. So the sensitivity seems to be pretty close to the same. It's not listed by Spirit Torino, but Kennerton does list the Thror at 100 decibels at 1 milliwatt. And like I said, they're pretty close in what they need as far as amps to drive them. Neither one of them needs a real powerful amp, but both of them, obviously do better with a good quality amp. The weight, the Spirit Torino weighs in, according to my kitchen scale, and it's hard to get an exact reading on this because the cable is non-detachable. So trying to figure out as close as I can the weight of the headphone, not figuring in the cable, I come up with 595 grams. According to my scale, the Thror weighs in at 495 grams, so about 100 grams lighter. The cables, the Spirit Torino is non-detachable, and from what I've read, that's because of the twin drivers. I guess the non-detachable cable was sort of a necessity with two drivers in each ear cup. I'm not sure exactly why, but that's what I read. The cable on the Kennerton is detachable and uses a 4-pin mini XLR connection at the ear cuffs. Both come with cables about 2 meters long, and we'll give you a look at, this is the Spirit Torino, and the cable, like I said, is not detachable, but it's a very, very heavy cable, about the heaviest cable, definitely the heaviest cable I've ever seen on a headphone. But it's nice quality, it's soft, it's flexible, and this one did come with a 4-pin XLR connection at the amp end, which I requested. Apparently it's available either way. You can get a 6.3 millimeter single-ended 1/4 inch plug for a single-ended amp. The Kennerton Thror uses 4-pin mini XLRs, like I said, and the cable that I'm using for this review is, and the reason for this is the Spirit Torino came with a balanced cable, so I wanted, to be fair, I wanted to use a balanced cable and the balanced output of my amps on the Kennerton, and the standard cable is a 1/4 inch single-ended connection. So anyway, I'm using their deluxe cable, which is a heavy braided cable and uses a 4-pin XLR, and you know, it's still, the price still comes in lower than Spirit Torino, so I think it was fair to do this. I wanted to talk about materials and build quality, and like I said, these are both flagship headphones. These are very high-end. These are both pushing $4,000, and the materials and build quality are, in my opinion, outstanding on both of these. Okay, to start with the Spirit Torino, you've got full aluminum ear cuffs, aluminum yokes, the steel shafts, and yeah, it does have kind of a grotto look, aluminum blocks, suede, I believe this is a suede leather on the top of the headband and leather underneath, and the ear pads are leather on the back, and material, I think it's called Alcantara on the ear pads. Anyway, I know it's really soft and comfortable. Like I said, a very substantial cable, and in my opinion, the build quality and the appearance of these is outstanding. The Kennerton Thror, which also is a beautiful headphone in my opinion. The build quality of Kennerton's is outstanding. The solid wood, this is Zebrano wood, and this is not a veneer, this is a solid piece of wood, and the yokes are aluminum. It has a different system for adjustment. It's got screw connectors that slide up and down and rotate, and the headband is lambskin leather. The ear pads are lambskin leather, very soft, very comfortable. Once again, outstanding build quality and outstanding materials. As far as fit and comfort, the Spirit Torino is a heavy headphone. At 595 grams, it is one of the heavier headphones, and it is a very large headphone. And but in my opinion, it's pretty comfortable. The weight doesn't bother me. The ear pads are comfortable. It seems to be distributed pretty well, but comparing it to the Kennerton, what I did notice, it seems like most of the weight of this headphone is in the ear cups, and it seems like that weight's kind of hanging by the head strap. It seems like, you know, my head's holding up most of the weight, where the Kennerton, it seems like the ear cups are supporting themselves a little more, not quite as much hanging from the top of my head. But anyway, the Kennerton is 100 grams lighter, and probably a little bit more comfortable in my opinion. The ear pads seem to distribute the weight a little bit better and hold the ear cups up themselves where they're not really hanging so much on the headband. I feel like I've got less weight pushing down on the top of my head. So anyway, I think I, gave a little bit of edge to the Kennertons as far as comfort. They do have a little bit more clamping force than I would like, and sometimes after a couple hours that can get to me a little bit, but they probably could be stretched out a little bit. If I put them on something and held them out for a while, they'd probably loosen up a little bit, which I never have done. I wanted to get into what equipment I used in comparing these, and they're high-end headphones, so they deserve some pretty high-end equipment, and I'm using the best I have right now. I'm starting out, all my music was from CDs, and I'm using a Cambridge Audio 540C CD player as a transport only, running a digital signal to a benchmark media DAC1, and then I'm running two outputs out of that, one to a Headamp GSX Mini that's also on loan to me from Headamp, and using the balanced output of that, and then I'm also running to an Audio GD Master 9 and using the balanced output of that. Those are the only two amps I could use for this review because the Spirit Torino does have a non-detachable cable and only came with a balanced connector. So those are the two amps I used, and what I did is, I know they're not exactly the same, but they do sound pretty close, and I compared them, using one amp with one headphone and then switched back and forth a few times, to give both a fair chance. And I also threw the low-key 4-band equalizer into the mix because, to be honest, the Spirit Torino is a little bit too bassy for me. In the mid-range, a little bit set back, a little bit more than I like, and I did EQ them, and I talked about that pretty extensively in my review of that headphone, and I prefer them quite a bit, with a little bit of light EQing. Like I said, out of the box are a little bit too bassy for me, so I did throw the EQ into the mix, and I did try EQing both, where I normally just listen to the Thror without an EQ, but to be fair, I did some EQing on that too, to compare these two headphones together. Excuse me a second. I think I mentioned this in my last video, but I heat with wood, and it's very warm and gets very dry in my house, so I need to occasionally get a drink as my throat gets dried out pretty bad doing these long reviews. And sorry, this review will probably get pretty long because I've got a lot to say about these two headphones. Anyway, starting out with getting into the sound, starting out with the tone balance, the Spirit Torino, I would basically say that out of the box, it's very bassy. It's got a pretty heavy bass emphasis and pretty warm, with the mid-range set back a little bit, and then a little bit of bump in the treble, so sort of a V-shape to the tone balance. But like I said, a lot of emphasis in the bass. Probably I'd say maybe 8, maybe 10 decibels above neutral. The bump in the bass. But for most of the review, I did do some light EQing with these, and basically what I did is I cut the bass at 20 hertz by about 3 decibels. I boosted the mid-range at 400 hertz by about, probably about 1 decibel, and then boosted the upper mid-range at 2000 hertz at about 1.5 decibels, and then boosted the treble about 1.5 decibels at 8000 hertz. So not a heavy EQing, a little bit of light EQing, but basically cut the bass a little bit and boosted the mid-range and treble. And when I did that, I really liked this headphone, really enjoy it. The tone balance on the Thror I would describe as pretty much absolutely dead neutral. Just pretty much no emphasis anywhere, no dips, no valleys, no peaks, just pretty much dead neutral. And it's, you know, pretty much what I like. It's not always my first choice, but I really do like a neutral headphone. So I did do a little bit EQing with it in the comparison, because even after I EQ'd the Spirit Torino, it was still a bit more bassy than the Thror, so I wanted to find out if I could bring the Thror up to that level of bass. And I was able, not quite there, I couldn't quite get to the same level on the bass. And it is my impression that dynamic driver headphones tend to respond better to EQing, especially in the bass. And the planar magnetics, just, you can't really push a planar magnetic too much in the bass department. So instead of really boosting the bass on the Thror, what I did is I cut the mid-range a little bit and the treble slightly, and could bring it, you know, pretty close to the same tone balance of what I'm coming up with the Spirit Torino. So anyway, getting into the different parts of the sound, the sub bass, the Spirit Torino has outstanding sub bass out of the box. You know, there's a hard hit to the bass, it goes real low. You know, the frequency extension on the bottom is very good on the Spirit Torino, and it's good on the Thror too. The Thror does go low, it just doesn't have the weight or the hit in the sub bass that the Spirit Torino does. But like I said, I would consider it pretty much about neutral. Like I said, with some EQ and toning down the Spirit Torino, it still has good sub bass. It doesn't have as much weight as it does out of the box, but it's still good, and it's still more than the Kennerton Thror is. The Kennerton Thror, like I said, it does go low. There's just not a whole lot of weight to it. It doesn't, you know, it's not a hard-hitting bass headphone. Very accurate, very neutral. Getting into the mid-bass, the Spirit Torino, once again, out of the box, has very heavy hit to the mid-bass, you know, very punchy. It is tight and controlled though. It's not what I would consider boomy or muddy or loose or anything. It's got a lot of bass, but it's very well controlled bass. But to me and my personal taste, and I'm not saying anything bad about this headphone, I'm not saying that a lot of bass is bad, because there are a lot of people out there that like a lot of bass, and it also depends what type of music you're listening to. If you're listening to rock, pop, electronic, you know, those types of music need some bass to sound good. So anyway, but in most cases, the bass was a little bit overwhelming, and I preferred it, you know, with about, like I said, about 3 decibels of cut to the bass. The bass on the Thror is very well balanced. You know, it's not hitting as hard. It's not a bass head headphone. If you're a bass head, the Thror is not the headphone for you. The Thror is a very accurate, very neutral, you know, you're going to hear it just the way it's recorded. There's no emphasis to the bass, really. Getting into the mids on the Spirit Torino, out of the box, are set back a bit. You know, the mid, there's definitely a V shape to the tone balance. The mids are down from the bass quite a bit, and a little bit from the treble. The mids are just sound a little distant to me, and even though they do have a lot of detail, you don't hear that detail, because it's just, you know, like I said, the mids are just kind of tuned down. Once I cut the bass a little bit and bump them, then, you know, the mids become really nice, really clean, much better detail than out of the box, and you know, up there real high, you know, not quite, you know, is not quite the clarity and detail of the Thror, but just a warm, you know, kind of lush, you know, just kind of a creamy mid-range, and it's very enjoyable. You know, I do like it a lot. And it, like I said, it's warm but doesn't give up much detail. The mids on the Thror, are once again just very neutral, very well balanced, and maybe just slightly on the warm side of neutral, just a little tiny bit, but just outstanding clarity detail in the mids on the Thror. Getting into the treble, the Spirit Torino, before I boost it, the treble is there, but it's not, it's a little bit distant too. It's, you know, a little bit bumped up from the mid, but I kind of have to strain to hear some of the detail in the treble, so I did when I EQ'd it, boosted the treble about 1.5 decibels, brought it out, made it very clean, very clear, and very detailed. So very good treble. The Thror has outstanding treble. The treble is just crystal clean, exceptional detail in the treble, and it never sounds harsh. It probably has the best treble of any headphone I've ever heard. Getting into detail, resolution, clarity, before I EQ the Spirit Torino, it seems to me to lack detail. The detail's good, but not good on a $4,000 headphone level. But when I EQ it and boost the mid-range a little bit, cut the bass, the detail really comes out, and there is a very good detail in the Spirit Torino. I mean, it's not quite on the level of the Thror. The Thror is on the verge of being analytical. Just exceptional detail. The Thror is the most detailed headphone I've ever heard. And, you know, even above some of the Hi-Fi Man, well, any of the Hi-Fi Man headphones I've heard, like the Sandara, which is only a $350 headphone, but has very good detail in the mid-range. And the Rhea, which is a $1,600 headphone, has exceptional detail. Well, the Thror is even beyond that. I mean, just incredible detail. Where, so I would say the detail on the Spirit Torino is very good. I would say the detail on the Thror, the clarity, the resolution is exceptional. Just, you will hear every last detail on a recording. It will, you know, etch out everything. You're not going to miss anything on that recording. As far as imaging, both of these headphones image extremely well. Very precise, very good separation of instruments, you know, so very easy to locate everything. I would say the imaging on the Spirit Torino is excellent, and I would say the imaging on the Thror is exceptional. It's just a little bit better. Just incredible imaging on both, but the Thror edges out the Spirit Torino a little bit on the imaging. Soundstage, both of these headphones have very wide sound stages. Some of the widest sound stages I've heard. The only headphone I've heard that possibly has a wider sound stage, excuse me, would be maybe the Aria by Hi-Fi Man, and there are a couple others that are up there close in the same range would be the Kennerton Odin and the Urzatish Phobos, which has a huge soundstage. Maybe the largest overall soundstage I've heard of any headphone. But anyway, both of these have very wide sound stages. They both have good height. The Spirit Torino, I would say, has good depth to the soundstage, where the Thror has more. It has exceptional depth to the soundstage. The Thror, I hear not only depth, but I hear layering. You know, the different distances to different instruments. You know, I can just hear them in multiple layers. And the Spirit Torino is good in that respect, but the Kennerton is even better. It does have, you know, quite a bit of advantage, and that's three-dimensional layering to the sound. Better than any other headphone I've ever heard in that respect. And it does give it a very real sound. You know, it makes you feel like you're there, like you're in a live concert or something. I wanted to talk about dynamics. Both of these headphones have good dynamics. Out of the box, before I EQ the Spirit Torino, it has exceptional dynamics in the bass. Very hard hitting. I would say average up in the mid-range and treble. Well, now before it's EQ'd, actually the mid-range sounds kind of flat without dynamics, but you know, a lot in the bass. Once I EQ it, it levels out. The dynamics in the bass comes down a little bit, but the dynamics in the mids and treble comes up. The Kennerton Thror, I would just say, is kind of average in dynamics, not lacking at all, but not real hard hitting, and that's usually the case with my experience with planar magnetic headphones. You know, they can have good dynamics, but they just don't always, they don't have the slam that some dynamic driver headphones do. Female vocals, and a lot of the music I listen to a lot of acoustical music with female vocals in it. That's probably what I listen to more than anything. And both of these are beautiful, but they're beautiful in different ways. The Spirit Torino gives female vocals kind of a rich, thick, creamy sound, and very enjoyable, where the Thror is more of a cleaner, clearer, more detail. You know, I just hear more texture and more depth into the female vocals. You know, it just digs in a little deeper and pulls out more detail. So both very enjoyable though, where, you know, the Spirit Torino is definitely on the warm side with female vocals, and the Thror is more neutral to maybe slightly on the warm side, but extremely detailed. I wanted to talk about isolation a little bit, and these are open back headphones, so you can't really expect much. And as far as keeping outside noise from coming in, neither one of them is good at all. I mean, they both get a poor rating, but that's typical. Open back headphones are not designed to keep outside noise out. As far as keeping inside noise in and not letting the music out where other people can hear it, the Spirit Torino lets a lot of sound out. It basically, I mean, you can, from across the room, you can tell exactly what song the person listening to this, you know, has on. The Kennerton is a little bit better. It doesn't leak quite as much sound, but you know, it's not that good at it either. So, you know, if these were closed backs, that'd be important. It's not really an issue with open backs, but I did want to mention it, that I think the Spirit Torino leaks a little bit more music into the room than the Kennerton does. I wanted to talk about the fatigue factor, and basically what I mean by that is, does the music wear you out when you listen to it? And neither one of these headphones has anything harsh or anything sibilant to them. You know, I mean, the treble is very clear and very clean on both, and that can wear you out. Distorted treble will wear out your ears faster than anything. Neither one of those has that at all. The only thing I find fatiguing about the Spirit Torino is if I don't EQ it, the bass is definitely fatiguing to me. That bass is just becomes overwhelming and does wear me out in a short time. If I tone the bass down a little bit with EQ, then that's not a problem for me. It, you know, the bass is very enjoyable. So without EQ, the bass does wear me out with the Spirit Torino. With the Kennerton, the only thing I find fatiguing about that is it is hyper detailed. It's an almost analytical headphone, but in this case, it's a good analytical. I mean, it just, you know, like I said, it etches out every detail, but that can wear you out after a little while. Just being super detailed like that can, you know, after a couple hours of listening, can just kind of wear out your ears. So I would say the fatigue level on both of these is low. But the Kennerton, like I said, because of the extreme detail, that can wear me out a little bit. And the Spirit Torino, if I don't EQ it, the bass can wear me out pretty quick. What else? I want to talk about forgiveness of poor recordings. The Spirit Torino, even after I EQ it, it's not hyper detailed. It has good detail, but it's not going to reveal every little imperfection in a recording. So it's pretty good as far as forgiveness. The Thror, no. The Thror is so detailed that if there are imperfections in the recording, you're going to hear them. So where the Spirit Torino, I can listen to pretty much any music I have and enjoy it, where the Kennerton, I'm kind of usually looking for my better recordings. Because a bad recording with the Kennerton Thror, you're going to notice that it's a bad recording and probably not enjoy it that much. So you're gonna want to stick to your better recordings with the Thror. As far as types of music, I would say the Spirit Torino, if you don't EQ it, it excels at rock and pop and electronic music. It's got a lot of bass and it makes those sound good. If you EQ it, it's good with pretty much anything. The Thror, on the other hand, being so neutral and all that, I would say it excels with acoustical and orchestral music. But if I EQ that a little bit, and by EQing the Thror, I mean boosting the bass slightly, maybe 1 or 2 decibels, and maybe cutting the mid-range 1 or 2 decibels, then it also is good with just about everything, and I enjoy it, with rock and pop and all that. I mean, even without EQing, I can enjoy any type of music with the Thror, but sometimes, listening to rock or whatever, I kind of wish I had a little bit more weight to the bass. But as far as, acoustical and orchestral, I haven't found anything that can beat the Thror yet. It's just incredible. I did want to talk about EQ response a little bit. I've kind of touched on this, but I did, the Spirit Torino being a dynamic headphone, I think, using dynamic drivers, I think responds a little bit better to EQ. The Thror being a planar magnetic, you can't really boost the bass much. You have better luck with cutting the mids a little bit. And some people suggest that anyway, that you should never boost frequencies, that you're better off cutting frequencies when you EQ, because, you can, cause distortion by trying to boost bass too much, or you can, if you don't have enough power behind your amp, you can push your amp into clipping and distort the bass. So anyway, but the Spirit Torino being a dynamic driver probably responds a little bit better of the two to EQing. So what is that? Oh, I did want to mention musicality. The Thror is very good. It's very musical, but it's a little, like I said, it's bordering analytical, and it doesn't have that warm, liquid, flowing sound that the Spirit Torino does have a little bit more of that. I would say it has a little bit better musicality, where the Thror, like I said, it's just it's just hyper detail, very, very, good clarity and resolution and all that, and it's not the most musical headphone, but it's still very enjoyable. And like I said, it's been sort of my reference and my favorite headphone for quite a while. So to kind of wrap it all up, basically what I've come up with is these are both very high-end, very, outstanding headphones. I really like both of them, but, for my personal taste, I kind of lean towards the Thror. I like a more neutral headphone, and I don't have to use EQ, I don't have to touch the Thror to make it sound good to me. The Spirit Torino is a little bit, and like I said, this is just my personal taste. If you're a bit of a bass head, you probably won't be interested in the Thror. You're probably going to like Spirit Torino better. So, but the Spirit Torino does EQ very well, and I can get it exactly where I like it, where, it's a very enjoyable headphone to me. So, basically the Twin Pulse Spirit Torino is a warm, bassy and fun headphone before you EQ it. When you EQ it, it can become pretty much anything you want it to be. A little messing around with the EQ, and like I said, nothing drastic. You can bring, it's still bassy, it's still a little on the bassy side of neutral, but you can get it where it has very good detail, very good, it has exceptional imaging, and a really good sound stage. And you know, like I said, with a little EQing, it is a very, you know, what I consider high-end headphone. It's up there with the best. The Thror, right out of the box, is very neutral, very well balanced, very accurate, and it has exceptional detail, exceptional clarity, exceptional imaging, and an exceptional sound stage. And the fact that it sounds very three-dimensional and almost holographic, you know, I mean, you just sound like, it feels like you're surrounded with the music. And you know, so like I said, if you're leaning towards being a bass head, you probably would prefer the Spirit Torino. If you're leaning towards, you know, you like a very neutral, very accurate headphone that's going to reproduce acoustical and classical music exactly the way it was recorded, then the Thror is probably a better choice for you. But I mean, like I said, these are, neither one of these really has any major weaknesses. They're both exceptional headphones. I realize they're both very expensive and, you know, probably beyond the budget of most people, but you know, if you spend as much time listening to headphones as I do, you know, and break it down over the hours or the years, it actually works out to pretty cheap entertainment. So, you know, I don't get out much, so I really enjoy my headphones. So, anyway, you know, like I said, these are both great, and, you know, I hope that my description of these would kind of lean you, you know, or help you decide which one of these may be the better headphone for you. So anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. This is getting pretty long. Once again, this is William from the Headphone Experience. If this video has helped you, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And you are all welcome to join us over at the Headphone Experience on Facebook. Thank you.